Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop, and we're not actually live today, but we have a great tutorial for you, so stay tuned. I'm going to talk a lot about half square triangles today. And what we're going to be working on is the Flea Market book. I am working on an alternative setting, which is right here, and I'm going to talk more about that at the end. But I am making all 12 basket blocks from this book, so you do need the book to be able to sew along with me today. But I wanted to tell you that if you're not familiar with half square triangles, I'm going to talk a little bit about the math so that you can always refer to this video. So I always use triangles on a roll. I actually own the company now, but for years I bought this before I ever owned the company because I love the product. So what we do is we have a half square triangle cheat sheet. So if you're ever stuck, and what it's going to tell you is if your pattern says to cut, let's see, 2 7/8, then your half square triangle is going to be an unfinished 2.5 and a finished 2-inch. And that's actually the size we're going to be working with today. And it tells you need H200 paper. So if you're, definitely download this if you're new to half square triangles, because all the numbers are here to be able to help you know what triangle paper to buy. And if you want to cut it bigger, instead of using triangle paper, just cut a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch bigger, because if I'm not going to use triangle paper, which is like never, but if, something happens, I always cut bigger than this. So that would be my tip for half square triangles: either cut bigger and trim down, or just use triangle paper. But this math is great to have like in your library of books, because it just helps you, especially when you're new at triangles on a roll or triangle paper. So in this book, there are 12 basket blocks, and they go around the center. And we've been doing this sew along with Lori, and on Lori Holt's YouTube channel, she's going to have some videos working with some of the churn dashes and I believe the blossom blocks. So you'll want to check that out. But I want to talk about half square triangles and the baskets, and we're going to be working on block number 1. But I want to show you, I have already pieced all of the other blocks in the quilt. So this is H200, and all of these blocks were made using that triangle paper, that size. So this book actually uses 2 different sizes of triangle paper. So you'll see that with my blocks, I have a lot of really good accuracy. And that's what triangles on a roll allows you to do, is to get really accurate triangles. And my blocks don't end up wavy. So 6 of the blocks use H250, which is what that one is. And then 6 of the blocks use H200, which is here, and we're going to be using H200 today. And the book does tell you exactly what you need. So these were a lot of fun. These were really quick for me to do. And I did press everything open. The book does have instructions, so you can either press open or press according to the book. I just wanted mine to be really nice and flat. So I've already pieced all of these blocks. The fabric is Flea Market by Lori Holt, and I've been just storing them on this little tray, and we're using H200 today, which is right here. So I'm going to set these aside, and I'm going to put them with my setting instructions, because now what I can do is I can go ahead and get all of this sewn together after this video, and take this triangles and roll home. So what I'm going to do is, when I'm looking at any kind of block, I'm going to look at where the fabric lies within the block. And when It's So Emma, which is our publishing company, publishes something, we always put the letters so you can easily see, is it a flying geese? Is it a half square triangle? Is it just a corner square, which is what this is? And so I've already kind of looked And basically the only trick that I'm going to do today is use triangles on a roll instead of the traditional method. And we have notes that tell you exactly what size you need. So I'm going to move this to the side and we're going to cut. We'll zoom in a little bit. But I'm actually going to start at the bottom. I'm going to need a total of 7 of these squares. So the first thing I'm going to do, make sure I have the right one. 2-inch finished, 2-inch finished. If I look in my book, it says 2-inch finished. Or you can use the chart I just showed you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what I will do is cut off first, just cut off 7 squares because I know I need that. And when you're working with triangle paper, any brand, it doesn't matter what brand, but you have to cut exactly on the line for accurate results. So I've cut off 7 and I'm going to save this one. I don't want to have to lose one. I've probably had this roll for a couple years. They pretty much last a really long time. So from here, I know I need 1 square from the blue. By looking at my pattern says I need 1 2 7/8 inch square. So I'm going to cut 1 there. I need 4 from the yellow. So I'm going to leave the 4 together, and then I need 2 more separately. And with this block in the book, there is a setting fabric, which is the fabric E. And I'm not going to be using that one today since I'm using a different setting. So I've got my paper cut. And I'm going to make 4 with the yellow, 1 with the blue, 1 with the denim, and 1 with the red. So to make it easy, I'm going to do the yellow first because that's the biggest one. So I'm going to put my background. Now the biggest thing with half square triangles is to always make sure your fabrics are right sides together. And you're going to see a lot of funny cuts. This is what is left over from what I started with when I made all my other blocks. So I'm going to need 4 of these. And triple check, right sides together. I do from time to time accidentally stitch them wrong, and I'm going to pin them in place. And that's going to be my G. Now this, I have some scrap buckets, so I'll go ahead and just show you what you can do with these. This is kind of the end of the stuff. So I'm going to cut a 5.5 inch square to put in my 5.5 inch bucket because I'm now done. And then I like to cut different sizes, so I'll cut a 4.5. Kind of whatever the biggest cut I can get is what I'm going to cut. And I try to just cut 1 of each size. I don't usually put like 2 5.5 inch squares. So I've got a 5.5, 4.5, 2.5, and then I'm going to cut a 1.5. And technically I should probably have waited until my block was completed in case I make a mistake. But since I'm on video, I'm just really hoping I don't make a mistake. Now, if you don't cut correctly on the lines on the triangles on a roll, I would probably cut another square out, or because it is important to be accurate. So now these will go in my scrap bucket that Lori Holt taught me about. Now, when her new book, Scrappiness is Happiness, comes out, I'm going to show you my buckets compared to what she does, So you can see that every designer and sewer does stuff differently. So you can still use her method and do it, you know, slightly different, because I only use squares and she uses squares and strips. And I actually do a little bit different sizes than her. So I'll set these aside. Then from my denim print, I need one. So I'll just go, let's see, I'll go stay on this corner. Right sides together. Pin, and then that I can tell I'm not going to have enough to save. I don't think. Let's see. Let's see if I can get a 1.5. Yeah, I can get a 1.5 inch square. And so that is going to be my half square triangle for denim. And then for the blueprint, I need 1 2 7/8 inch square and a 4.5 inch square. So I'm just going to keep going on the corner of this white. And you'll notice when I'm cutting my fabric, I do cut really far outside the back, this paper. That's just because I want to be able to go fast. You could go a little bit closer. I just like to be able to go fast. And another thing is, like, you definitely don't want to sew it like this, or you're going to have short half square triangles. And then we're going to need a 4.5 inch square from this blue. So I'm just going to use a Creative Grids ruler. Now, since this is a plaid fabric, you could cut it like that. You could cut it however you want. But I am going to cut it where I put the line on the ruler on the line on the diagonal, because I want it to be pretty. And I want it to look good. So this is going to be my fabric H, so I'll label it with my alphabetties. And then I've got all this fabric, and I'm going to cut it up into, for my buckets. And then at the end of the video, I can show you my buckets that I put them into. So let's see, 6.5. I might be able to get a 6.5, so we'll see. Yep, I can get a 6.5. And I learned this from Lori Holt, so this is something she taught me years and years ago. It took me forever to implement it. And I have a little bucket that I keep these in, and then my kids once a week have to put them in the right buckets. So I'm just seeing what size, what are the biggest sizes I can get. And I would, if I were you, definitely wait until your block is finished, so that if you have a mistake, you can fix it. So I usually go from the largest to the smallest to see what I can save. So there's a 3.5. That's why I love the Creative Grids rulers. And that's how I come up with the sizes I'm going to use. The boxes I have are 6.5, 5.5, 4.5, 3.5, 2.5, and 1.5. And then I can get a, and I usually, like, you could get, you know, one more 2.5 inch square right here to put in if you wanted. I usually just put one square of each size in. I don't know why. So then these will go in the buckets later. And then from my red, I need one square. Okay, and if I'm going to do that, what I'll do is, if it's going to be kind of short right here, I'm going to put it on here so that I see the shorter fabric, which is going to be the white. And then I can probably, let's see if I can get a 3.5 or 4.5. Oh, I can get a 4.5. And so when her book comes out, I want you to read it and then just see how you can adapt it. So what I do is I keep squares. She keeps strips and squares. Now from here, all I have to do is cut the rest of my background. So I've already cut fabric A, and I need 2.5 by 6.5 inch rectangles. So what I'm gonna do, this is 6.5, and I'm gonna cut a 2.5 and a 2.5. So kind of cut from a corner. So 2.5, and these are going to be my B's, so I'll label them. And then I need 3 2.5 inch squares. So 7.5 is the width I need. So then I'm left with this big piece. Now with backgrounds, I don't cut these up and put them in my box. What I do is I have a big stack of backgrounds that I just put big yardage in. This isn't yardage, but this is what I'll put this in my background bucket. I'm not gonna cut this one up. And then from here, I'm gonna cut 2.5 and then subcut it 3 times. But that's kind of how I cut. I just cut from like the side of a fabric. I'm gonna iron this a little bit. And of course, if you have any questions, just pop them in and we will get them answered. So that's 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. Okay, so here's my design board. Now I technically don't need the letters for the half square triangles. But I need them for C, D. So I have them labeled, and then the ones that are for half square triangles, I don't really need to label because I can just look back at my pattern. But what I do now is I mass do everything at one time. Now, if I was doing this at home, I would do at least 3 blocks at a time, and I would have 3 design boards and I would stack them. And I would do all the half square triangle stitching at one time, all the half square cutting at one time. And I would have my kids pull all the half square triangles off at one time. They know to put it on their on the design board. So now what I'm going to do is go to my sewing machine. I'm going to use open toe foot. I'm going to lower my stitch length to like a 1.3, 1.2, and I'm going to stitch directly on the dotted lines. And if you stitch a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, you're going to have a little bit big or a little bit short pieces. And I don't start on the paper, I start a little bit off on the fabric. So you can see my stitches, they're super tight, and I always use AURIFIL 2000. And I do start off of the paper just so it's a little bit more secure. And I usually take the pins off before I start stitching. And I'm using an open toe foot just so I can see where my stitches are, or where my needle is. Now from here, I'm just going to start in the middle because it's easier. So from here, I have everything stitched exactly on the line. And what I'm going to do is just cut them all at one time. And I try to cut exactly on the very edge of the paper. And this is probably my favorite notion in my whole sewing room is my triangle paper, because it just makes everything very fast and it makes my blocks look really nice. And there's not very much waste. So we've got that one. And they're super easy to peel off. I'll give you some little tips in a second on pulling the paper off. Everyone does it a little bit different, including my children. Sometimes I'm like, okay, because they fight over who does it, because they get $5. And except Emma, she's not going to do that for $5. She's like, no, I'm going to walk the dog. Let's see. Okay. And this block has 4 different colors, so if I had 2 different sizes, for example, if I had, you know, some triangle paper that's 3 inches, maybe, you know, different sizes, I would still do all of that at the same time. I kind of cut each block all at once, move to the next block, but I do mass, okay, you can see right there I'm a little bit off on my paper. So I'm gonna fix that. I do mass do all of it. At one time. Let's see, I'm a little bit, I can tell I cut a little short right there, so. And then now here you have to cut across. These are important that you cut these straight. And then now these right here, the diagonal lines, they do not have to be perfect and straight because those are inside the seam allowance. So I don't really have, I try not to, you know, make them too crazy because I don't want to have like one side have too big and one side have too small or something like that. But I'm going to just cut. Okay. Now, there's a couple ways you can take the paper off. You can just rip the paper off. That's one way. You can fold the paper down, then rip it off. Some people take an iron with no seam, set it on top, and then pull it off. I usually just kind of pull, but if you are having a hard time, like for example, if you start pulling right here and it hangs, that means your stitch length is not long enough and that your stitches might come out of the side, which you definitely don't want that. And I can sew these really fast, especially when, like you could do the whole book and do all of them at one time. And then you can just put your paper in the recycle bin. And I just use the same needle. I don't worry about changing my needle. I use the same rotary blade. I don't do anything different when I'm using half square triangles. Okay. Now I have a little bit of mess. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press them to one side, clip off the dog ears, then I'm going to press them open, and I'm going to use my clapper. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's see, make a little stack, kind of set the seams all at one time, meaning just get it nice and hot, and then I'm going to press them kind of in like a little stack, or a little, like all together, so that the bottom one gets squished further, I guess. And since I'm going to press open, it doesn't matter which way I'm pressing. And this one has a lot of triangles together, which is why we're recommending that you press open. But on all of mine, I pressed open just for, I guess, just for kicks. This quilt is going to finish at 56 by 70, and it's going to be awesome once I get it all put together. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is cut off the dog ears first, because if you press open, then you'll have 4 dog ears to cut off instead of 2. So that saves time. And this is the step I'm hoping my kids can learn how to do this, but for now I don't know that I trust them to not cut my triangles. So I hope you guys are sewing this quilt. It's going to be so pretty. And a lot of you have already finished the big one, so that's amazing. And it'd be really cool if you put it on your bed and then put like 6 of the basket pillows on there. It'd be so cute. Or you could put up 2 basket blocks next to each other and put it into a sham or something. So clip, clip. And just imagine if you did all 12 blocks, you could do all that at one time. And then I'm going to press open. I'm going to try to do it a little bit over here so I can put my clappers over here. I'll probably do it up here first. And I like them to be not hot when I press open so I don't burn myself. And I do about 4 at a time, and then I'm going to put the clapper on there. Now the clapper is made of a wood that absorbs the heat, and it's going to make it really nice and flat. And I use the clapper more if I am pressing open. If I'm not pressing open, I will use it more as a last step on the very last step of the block, but not necessarily throughout. And also the clapper, I think it's a great notion, but it's not something you have to have. It's kind of like an accessory. I do use mine all the time though, but you don't have to feel like you have to have that. And a lot of husbands have made them. So we've almost got this, and then building the block is going to be super easy because we're going to lay it out on a design board. And again, if I was doing this with all my blocks, I would lay out them all on my design boards and then alternate between the blocks. See how much flatter that is on the left side than the right? And the clapper only works if the units are hot. If they're not hot, it's not going to work. Well, I mean, I guess it might work a little. So then what I do is, oh, I do have one other thing to do. I need to put a corner square on here. I forgot about that. So I'm going to use a friction pin. Draw a line from corner to corner. I'm going to glue it on the corner. It doesn't actually matter what corner because if you rotate it, it comes out the same. And stitch directly on that line. trim a 1/4 inch away. And I also need to press this. I'll press this on the side and I'll also press it open. And I have found since I started using the seam align glue that my accuracy is even a little bit better. So now what I like to do is I'm just going to look at the final diagram and start laying out everything how it goes. So let's see. So I've got that. And I'm just going to look at it as a photo. Let's see. So I'm going to use these two. Sometimes I have to put it right next to the book to get it right, to make sure I've got it in the right spot. This is going to go here. This is going to go here. I'm putting it kind of next to the book to make sure I've got it going the right direction. So there's a lot of triangles in this. I think the block one is one of the harder ones. And then these go a little bit different direction. And then when I did my other blocks, I did them in sections of like 3 or 4. And so I used 3 or 4 design boards, did the whole block, and then finished. And then this one I have an extra half square triangle, which you can just save, and you could actually put it in your one of your boxes if you want of scraps, or you can put it somewhere else. But right here, I'm not gonna leave it like this because I don't trust myself to make sure that I've got it right. So I'm gonna look again. So these should face each other. And I'm kind of like, in my book, this is what I'm doing. Like aqua, 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 red, yellow, yellow, making sure I'm on the right side of the, and that white goes that way, the white goes this way, white, 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 and then that goes that way. Okay, so I'm going to piece it in chunks, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to start pinning things together. And I'm going to put a 1/4 inch foot. And I'm actually going to put this on there too. And I'll kind of sew a lot of seams, stop, press. Sew a lot of seams, stop, press. And if I was doing like 4 or 5 blocks at one time, I would be doing the same thing. I'd pin all 4 design boards, sew all of them, iron all of them, do them all at one time. And then the key is when you come back to put them in the right spot, which is where I usually get off a little bit. And since you're using triangles on a roll, your triangles are going to be the perfect size. You're not going to have mismatched pieces. Okay, so that's about enough pinning so I can iron, and then I'll put them all back on the board at one time. Now I'm going to switch to a 1/4 inch foot with the guide, and I'm going to chain piece all of them using a 1.5 stitch length, and I'm going to just chain piece all real quick. And this is how fast I sew at home. And this little piece, I had it pinned twice, so I'm going to do the other side of that. And then just cut all my little chain pieces apart, and then I'm going to just press to one side, then press open, and then I'll place them back on my design board where they go. And thank you to everyone watching, and thank you to everyone who has given us a super chat or became a YouTube member. We truly appreciate it. And it was meant to be a live video, but something came up, so just doing that video a couple of days early. So here I am going to just press my seam, press to one side, set my seam, press to one side. And you'll see that you get a really good, you can see how accurate everything is lining up. And there's lots of different triangles on a roll. I mean, there's lots of different triangle paper on the market, so you can try different brands. You can do the traditional method. I would just, if you're gonna sew them the traditional method, I would just always cut bigger and then trim down. That's just my preference. And I do find that I get more accurate results when I press open. If you're going to press open though, use a tiny bit smaller stitch length than you normally use. I usually use a 1.5 at all times just because I don't ever want anything to come apart. And then this one has two little seams. And I could have done this in 2 separate steps. I was just showing you can do 2 at one time if you're just cognizant that the other side is also pinned and you don't accidentally sew through all the layers. And when I'm ironing, you'll see that I don't shake my iron. I like it to just be nice and steady. And then throw those on my design board. And then realign everything. Now, if I hadn't chain pieced and I had just pieced and then put everything back where I got it, I wouldn't have to do this. But that's not what I decided to do today. So I have to kind of figure out where I was, but I think I can remember. We'll see. So I bet that's right. Okay, so I do the same thing. This is not right here. Wait. Yeah, it is. Yellow, 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 yellow. Okay. So I can sew these 2 together. I can sew these 2 together. I can sew this together. No, I can't. I gotta sew these together. Okay, so I'm gonna sew these 2 together. Right here. And I'm not doing the instructions exactly like the book, meaning that I'm just kind of going in whatever order. Now here, you have a point right here where that half square triangle should meet the white piece. So I'm going to poke my pin right on that point and a 1/4 inch down, put it in on the white. And I hope that's the right spot. And then these can go together. So you can kind of, once you get more experience, figure out, do you want to assemble exactly like the book, or your pattern or do it your own way. And anytime you see half square triangles, you can sew them any way you want. Now before I go to, I'm going to see that that matches. It's a little bit off. Can you zoom in? It's a tiny bit off, so I'm going to fix it. Let's see. It's a 1/16 of an inch right there. So what I'll do is I'm going to unpick from just the center part. And it's really hard to do on film because I cannot see as good. But I'm just going to pull, I'm going to basically seam rip every couple stitches and then on the other side pull it out. And then I'm just going to fix that center part. So, and I swear at home I can seam rip, but here I have the hardest time. We changed seam rippers a couple of times, so I know it's just me. I just can't see the thing. Okay, let's see if I can. Da, 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 da. Okay, let's see. And then I need to pull a little bit over here. Okay, so that should be enough to where I've just seam picked a little bit. And then I'm going to line that up better, pin it again, start in the middle, go that way, see if it's correct, and if it is, then go back the other way. Much better. It's perfect now. No holes. Yay. So now I'm going to, I see one little thread right there. That needs to come out. It's just from the previous stitches. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to press these open and then do the final assembly. So do you guys like to press open? We can do a little poll. Do you like to press open or press to one side? I used to always press to one side. I never pressed open. And Lori was the one who was pressing open, and I thought she was crazy. And now I press open all the time. So maybe I'm the crazy one now. I think that I don't know. I think you just evolve in your quilting journey, and I think I also just want to be so accurate that I feel like I can get more accurate results pressing open. Now this one has a little string right there because I think it's because previous stitches. Okay. And see, that's kind of jaggedy. I want it to be nice and flat, so go from the front. And then we're almost done. Now, this is where I usually mess up, if y'all want to know the truth. This is usually where I think, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know exactly where everything goes, and then it goes the wrong place. So, that just, yep, see? Okay, that looks right. So now I'm going to do these two together. And what I'm going to do is pin a couple of times. So I'm going to pin at on the right side. Okay, right here I've got 2 half square triangle points. So there's a point here and there's a point here. I'm going to put my pin in that point. I'm going to put the pin right in the other point. And if you have sewn with a short enough stitch length, your stitches won't come apart. Now, if you do that and your stitch length is too long, it's going to come apart. And I'm going to try the same thing here and hope I get more accurate results this time. And then I'm going to just sew with 1/4 inch seam. Okay, so right there I need to sew a tiny bit more. I moved a little bit. And then I'm going to set my seam, press to one side, press open. So set my seam, press to one side, and then press open, and then just keep building my block. So then we'll go this way. And the same thing, pinning is just so important with these half square triangles. Right here you want your yellow and your blue to touch and your white to touch but to not overlap, if you can see that. And since we pressed open, it should be pretty easy to get that to work. And then I just look at every seam, the same thing, poke a pin, poke in one side, and again, if your stitches are coming out, that's just lower your stitch length. Let me see. And then go in here. And then my plan is to get this whole quilt put together so I can show you guys next week. It's gonna look so pretty. And I think for the quilting, I'm gonna do a big swirl. Swirl pantograph. That looks good. Press to one side and then press open, and then just keep building your block. And like I said, if you're doing 4 blocks at one time, this will go so much faster because you don't have to start and stop as many times because you're starting for one whole block. And again, just line up your seams. And you'll notice when I am sewing, I pull my pins out right before I run over them, or I try to. I try to not run over my pins with my sewing machine. Sometimes I guess I do, but I try not to. And the same thing here. I want my points to match. So I call it poke a pin, but I made it up. That's something I made up a long time ago. You could just eyeball it. Since I stitch with such a tight stitch length, I really do not like to pull my stitches out. And then right here, that also has to line up. So we're almost done. And this block is probably the hardest one out of the whole book, which is funny. They look good. So see how that works out? It comes out exact. So same thing, press to one side, then press open, and then we have 2 seams left. So it shouldn't take too much longer. So it looks correct. And then I can always count on you guys, because if I ever make a mistake, you'll tell me, and then you make it really easy. Sometimes I forget though, and then you'll have to tell me twice. Now this one, you can see this doesn't line up to anything. So what I'll do is pin the left and the right first, and then just kind of, I mean, you don't really have to pull it, but just like right in the center, just put a pin. You could put 2 pins if you wanted. And then you should have no overhang here. So it should line up there. It should line up there. And same thing, press. This is how the back looks. And then my last seam. And then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my scraps and the fabrics that I cut up to put in those boxes. So this one, I do need to poke a pin. It is quicker if you don't do the poke a pin, I'll tell you that, but I pretty much always do it. So we're almost done. And it lines up. So now we can I'm going to do the last iron, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the finishing on this and my scraps. So from here, just do that final press, press to one side, press open. It's still a little hot. Just gently go over it. And then on these blocks, what I've been doing is I'm going to trim the outside side, the side. And see, that's how it should be, where nothing comes off. Watch. That's a perfect block right there, except a little string comes off. So I did good today compared to most days. And then there, a little bit came off. I just like it to be really nice and together. And like I said, this has a separate setting that you can download for free, and I'm going to give you some tips on that. So when you lay out your blocks, you'll follow this diagram. So this one is right here. But what I want to show you is some different tips. So like right here, I'm going to look at my diagram. This would be a B. I'm going to we're going to zoom out a little bit, but I'm going to show you how to make it accurate. So we'll take a fabric B, because I've already cut all this. And I'm going to show you. Basically, you lay this out on your floor, but you need an A, an A, and a C. And this is where the tip is going to come in. So I'm going to pull 2 A's. And I struggle with setting quilts that are on point. I don't like them. But I have learned to basically live with them, if that makes sense. So I've learned a way to make it work for me. Okay. So you're gonna lay out the whole quilt like this. I mean, you're gonna have everything. But what I wanted to show you is this fabric B. It's the exact same size as my block. If it's a little bit off, you know, you just pin it. But these triangles, I cut 1 inch bigger. I always do. And then what you do, instead of putting it like this, you wanna line up this long skinny edge, and you put it here and you pin all the way across, because this is bias. So you pin, and you want it to line up where when this opens, this is completely straight and this is completely straight, and then the fabric C's are your corners. So you're gonna do these 3 first, trim, add this. When you add it, you fold it in the center, fold your block in the center, match it up, and then you will have a lot you can trim off. And just be really careful. What I do is I draw a line across the whole quilt 1/4 inch away from these seams, all 4 sides, and then I trim it. And it should go together for you really nice. So if you tune in next week, you're gonna see all of this sewn together, and you'll see my beautiful backing that I have sewn together. And now I'm going to show you my scraps. So this is what I have, this is my version of Lori's scraps, and so it's different than hers. So when you look, let's see, they're labeled. How do I make them all show? Okay, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5. 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. Now when you get her book, hers is going to be a little bit different. And then what I do is, I mean, these are just from Michael's, and like my 5.5, it's pretty much full, and I will take any 5, I put them all in this wooden tray that I got, and anything that fits in here, you can see this was already in here. So I have my kids once a week, they have to empty this out, and sometimes it's completely full and sometimes it's not. And we just put all the scraps from in here, and so I have a lot of 5.5. No, this is not 5.5, this is 4.5. So my 4.5 is full. My 5.5 is less than my 6.5. And then my 1.5 is my newest addition, and I don't have very many, so there's not very many. And then the 2.5, these are the ones that I grab from the most. So I usually have more than this, but I have grabbed from these recently to use them up. And then I have a lot of 3.5. And these just have to go sideways because of the way they fit. So that is my scraps. Now, I am going to have a tutorial on my members only channel using up some of these scraps. And I was getting, when I first started this, I was like so frustrated because I kept going to my closet, getting these out, putting all the fabric in. And then I realized, no, that's not very efficient. So I just do this. My kids have to divide them out, and then they just put them in here. So I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. Make sure to like our video, comment, and let me know what you think of triangle paper. I would love to know. And have a great weekend. Bye.